Okay. All right. Hey, everybody. Misty Williams here with Healing Rosie. And I am so excited about the conversation I'm about to have with Robyn Openshaw. You guys have probably seen her around our space if you've been to different conferences and events, if you do a lot of searching online. Robyn has been doing awesome work, really teaching people how to create a lifestyle around a lot of the things that we know and are learning in the ancestral functional medicine space are really crucial for helping us to clean up our life and really heal. So super excited she's here today, and we are about to have a really awesome conversation that is going to give you so many practical insights into what you can do today to start making big strides in revolutionizing your own diet, the diet of your family, finding ways to incorporate detoxifying foods into your life that are going to help you heal deeply and at the root. And one of the things I love about Robyn is that not only has she been doing this work for a long time, but she's a woman like us who has actually had her own struggles around a lot of these issues. She's had Hashis and has had to deal with hormonal issues, just like so many in our community have. So really excited for our conversation today. Welcome, Robyn.
Thanks for having me, Misty. I should mention that not only have I, in the far distant past, I'm in my 50s now, but in my early 30s and late 20s, early 30s, I was really suffering with autoimmune disease, especially Hashimoto's. But I should also mention that I had a child almost die before I changed my diet. And that's really how I got the motivation. I didn't know that what was going on with me was hormone, and I didn't know that what was going on with me was reversible with diet. I just knew that I had a child who had nearly died and had been in the emergency room over and over and over again. And I had to do something different than what I was doing with the take him to the doctor and put him on lots of drugs approach.
Yeah. Well, why don't you tell us a little bit about that? What was going on for you that kind of inspired this entire journey?
Yeah. Well, to back up one step, I think that, like a lot of your followers will identify with, the descent into autoimmune hell is a long, slow one. And I had been in that descent for years. And now looking back with the knowledge base that I have, it's like, oh, okay, my hands and feet were cold all the time. My hair was falling out. I had 5 years of infertility. So even getting pregnant with this baby was a problem. I was we were trying to have a baby for almost 6 years before we conceived him. He was a twin. I lost the twin. Very classic issues with my autoimmune disease, but it had not yet been diagnosed. And so I had this little guy after losing his twin and after several pregnancies and 6 years of infertility, and I was just a bit of a smother mother. And he got really sick when I weaned him off of breast milk, which is another thing I did not know better to do. I did what the pediatrician told me. He said to wean the baby about 6 months. My goodness, put that kid on formula and his health went from great to terrible health overnight. And there was no going back. Once you wean your baby, you can't go back to breastfeeding.
Right.
And so as his health tanked and he was in and out of emergency rooms and I was up all night with him many times, he had severe asthma, life-threatening asthma attacks. They would always get just terrible about 2 a.m. and I would be calling after-hours nurse saying, he's breathing 85 times a minute and he looks blue. All the steroids they had him on, the bronchodilators every 4 hours, inhaled, liquid steroids, 5 courses of liquid steroids in 1 year. The 5th time, the pediatrician prescribed me the steroids, and it just was like, gosh, this is terrible. This has been going on for so many months, almost a year now of these treatments, and gosh, there has to be something else. When he handed me the 5th course of steroids, he said a thing that I'm so glad he said to me. He said, if your child is on 5 courses of liquid steroids in a year, the research shows that it's guaranteed to stunt his growth.
Wow.
And I was like, well, okay, well, I handed it back to him. I was like, okay, well, what else you got,
Right.
And he just was kind of like, well, you've used all our magic bullets. I mean, we put him on all the hardcore drugs. He's in the hospital. We put him on the antibiotics every time he would get a, green nose, green or yellow snotty nose. And so I had just done all the wrong things. Those are, I understand those to be life-saving things now, as I have a deep knowledge of functional medicine now and natural approaches to when my child was sick. But I was 27, 28, as I was struggling with these things, I just didn't have the knowledge base that I have now. And I look back now, and that crisis with my son is one of the greatest blessings of my life, because it was this divine tap on the shoulder letting me know that some things in my life needed to change. Well, I actually had the strange and sort of combination of unfortunate and fortunate experience of watching my grandmother and my uncle when I was in high school go through cancer. And my grandmother had chosen the holistic path. She did the Gerson protocol. She was drinking veggie juice and carrot juice. She turned orange from so much veggie juice. She did no chemo and radiation, said no to it. Everybody told her she was crazy. Everyone told her she was going to die. And the doctor said, you will have less than a year if you do not do chemo and radiation. She said, oh, I'm not doing it. I'm going to do something else. Lots of specific treatments and modalities and supplements. No sugar, no animal products for 2 years. She was absolutely religious about it. And she totally reversed her cancer. She lived another 20 years. And she was there when all 4 of my children were born.
That's amazing.
At the same time she was going through that, her son, my uncle, at the age of 32, was diagnosed with cancer. He did chemo and radiation, and 18 months later, he was dead of the side effects of the chemo and radiation. So I had left behind 3 small children. He was a Price Waterhouse Cooper. That, if you're old enough, you know that was like one of the biggest accounting firms in the world. He was a partner there, just a rising star, valedictorian of his school. Anyway, those 2 stories, I had watched them. And so I had that to look back on. And I was like, what if our diet has something to do with this? Do I need to address our diet? If my pediatrician just sent me out the door saying, all I got for you is these steroids. Oh, and P.S., it's going to stunt your son's growth. I was married to a college offensive lineman. I am tall. I'm a lifelong athlete. He was a collegiate athlete. We were like, no, we're raising tall,
yeah,
athletic kids here. We're not going to stunt their growth. That is not acceptable. So I went home, had to do some soul searching, had to do a lot of learning, went to the health food store that day that I went home crying all the way home from the pediatrician telling me, I've got nothing more for your son. And I was like, oh my gosh,
probably.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, he's 15 months old. We got a ways to go here.
Right. Exactly.
And so I went to the health food store, and I was literally just pushing a cart around, and not a clue in the world what you buy there. But I was like, well, this is where the healthy people go. And I was literally stopping people in the health food store and saying, pointing at my baby in his car seat and saying, my baby is really sick. Do you have any ideas for me? Like where to go, who to learn from, books to read? And several people sent me to the same person as I just started asking questions of all the earthy, crunchy people I knew. And I learned that I needed to get my son off of dairy and sugar and processed flour products, and eat as organic was not nearly as big a thing back then. It was harder to find organics. Costco didn't have organics.
Right.
Bottom line, as quickly as I could, given the fact that I knew next to nothing except that there's something there, because I watched my grandmother treat food as medicine and completely turn around a metastatic melanoma that was metastasized to her breast and her lymphatic system. I had seen her turn that around when doctors said it was not possible. I knew that there was power in food. I just had fallen into eating what my husband's family taught him to eat. I was feeding him what he wanted to eat, and I was feeding my baby what every other mother was feeding her child. I was feeding him chicken nuggets and Otter Pops and ice cream and pizza, and we were all eating that kind of stuff. Very rarely a vegetable or fruit.
Yeah. So when did you get your autoimmune diagnosis? How far down the line was that for you?
I did not get my own diagnosis till I had my 3rd child. So I had 3 children in less than 5 years, which a lot of people will tell you. For some reason, people get diagnosed, think things really crash after 3 babies, especially if you have them in a short window of time. So that was definitely when things went from bad to worse.
Yeah. Kaja Kynes actually did a live with us doing a Ask Me Anything from our community. And she talked about, someone came on with Hashis and talked about a little bit, they asked a question about how, what was presenting with their Hashis. And she said, did this happen for you after you got pregnant or after you had your baby? She was like, oh my God, yes. And then Kaja kind of outlined, well, this is what happens in women's bodies after pregnancy. For a lot of women, this is a trigger and actually causes the flare. So fascinating.
Yeah, which is interesting because having babies is so disease preventative on a lot of other levels. Women who have babies and women who have breastfed babies are a lot less likely, for instance, to get breast cancer. However, yeah, there is something about it with autoimmune disease, probably just because of all the wild swings in hormones going
Right.
on.
Right. So when, as you kind of opened up into this landscape of using real foods and got your own diagnosis, what are some things that you've really learned as a woman when it comes to taking care of yourself? We're going to talk about the food piece together, but were there some other things that happened on your journey that might be really helpful for women to hear who are like working on reversing their autoimmunity, dealing with a lot of the flabby, foggy, and fatigued symptoms, and trying to figure out how to basically regain control of their life?
Yeah, by the way, I love the title of your summit, Flabby, Foggy, and Fatigued, because not only was I an English major and I love alliteration, but also I was all those things.
Yeah.
I was a mother of 3 young children, and I had gained 65 pounds without changing what I was eating. I was tired all the time. I was a lousy mom, to be very honest, until I got this thing turned around. And I'll tell you the 3 major things that were complete game changers for me. And I don't think you can ignore any one of the 3. But I was flabby, I was foggy, I was fatigued. The foggy a little bit less so, but I was moody.
Yeah.
I was moody as heck.
Right.
So the 3 major things, this is very high level, but I did 3 major things that changed my life. And I don't have, now in my 50s, I don't have ups and downs in mood. I mean, I might have a bad day, but I was like this back before I got control of my hormones. But bioidentical hormone intervention and getting tested every single year. I've been in complete remission from Hashimoto's for 17 years. We can talk about what I ate and what those shifts were that I made. And I have a video masterclass. You can share the link to that. That's free, about what I did. I know you have a link to that. So getting a good functional medicine doctor. And by the way, that was the hardest one.
I know. Even when you have a good one, you don't have a good one in my experience.
Yeah. Well, I do not disagree with you. And there's lots I could say about that, because I have been with 7 different practitioners, and some of them were functional medicine doctors, or considered themselves functional medicine doctors, and downright malpractice.
Right.
In the case of one of those 7, the other one just like price gouging and dumped me when something went, it was lots of strange things happen along the way. But getting the hormones dialed in, which is a process, and people have to realize, you go to your hormone doctor, and what they put you on is an experiment. You've got to get the retesting. And if that hormone doctor sends you out the door and says to come back in a year, get a new one. Hormone doctor. Right. Mm-hmm. Because you might be way off. It might actually make it worse. And so that was a process, and we could talk in more depth about any one of these 3. Number 2, detoxing twice a year. Absolute game changer for me. Crazy black tar like sludge came out of me. I'd read so much about detoxing. I have been a student of human detoxification now for 25 years because I was so fascinated about what happened for me. And now we've had 13,000 people go through our detox and have crazy similar results. I mean, dead parasites coming out, catarrhal mucoid plaque, which is this rubbery stuff in the intestinal tract of most Americans, because they've eaten like white flour and animal products. And, our GI tract is just not built to have a diet like that. They have 30, 35 feet. Think of it all squished together, which is what it is, like this, 30 to 35 feet of it. We cannot just eat meat and processed food. It's not going to work. And so stuff builds up over the course of years. I saw that stuff come out of me and I read all these books, and I was like, I wonder if I have that stuff. That was highly motivating for me to change my diet permanently. Now, when I detox twice a year, I don't see catarrhal mucoid plaque coming out of my body. Right. So getting my hormones in line, unfortunately, I think for me, because I was a downwinder baby, I was exposed to a ton of radiation as an infant. I was drinking radioactive cow milk just downwind of the Nevada test site where the U.S. government was detonating bombs. I will probably for the rest of my life have to take bioidentical hormone. Because it's bioidentical, I'm not worried about it. There's no evidence it causes cancer like synthetic hormone does. I'm not worried about that. Some women who, come to us are like, I don't want to take that. It's bad for me. I'm like, well, not really. I think what's bad for you is heading downhill, massive decline when your hormones are out of balance and one's way too high and one's way too low.
Yeah.
You feel like crap and you're aging faster than you need to. So getting hormones in balance, detoxing twice a year, and really what you wanted to talk about today is making that shift to eating a whole foods diet. Now, whether that diet includes a little bit of animal products or not, I don't want to take a stand on that. I don't think the evidence is clear whether we can get away with eating. Well, I think the evidence is clear that people can be healthy eating a little bit of animal products. However, in North America, we are currently eating massively more animal products than we should. Our animal products, even the ones that we buy organic, free range, you know, not in a cage, whatever that word is, cage free, they're still highly problematic. So the goal was decreasing the amount of animal products we're eating. Average Americans eating 20% animal protein, and it's just way too much. Really, really clear that that is way too much.
Mm-hmm.
Now, some of us feel better with more animal protein, and that's fine. However, the problem that I see as I look at the evidence about what Americans are eating is that the vast majority of us, and by vast majority I mean over 95%, are not getting anywhere near as much plant food.
And that's really, I think, the biggest thing that we all need help with is how do we incorporate more plant foods? Because you're right, no matter where you fall on the spectrum, if you're more keto, if you're more paleo, if you're more vegan, if you're more whatever, no matter which template you're choosing, you've got to incorporate a lot more vegetables and root vegetables and even some fruits into your diet. It can't be a lot of processed foods and heavy meat and even heavy fat. Like women especially, we have to be careful about getting too much fat. You know, most women can't handle the load that men, you know, profess to be able to handle, and it makes them amazing athletes and they feel so amazing. For women, it just makes us fat.
Yeah, and you know what? Even men, their livers are not equipped to handle the amount of fat that is in some of the fad diets right now.
Right. So let's kind of dive in a little bit more. You've told us a little bit about your journey with your son and things that you confronted in your own health journey. Why don't you talk to us a little bit about this masterclass you have? Because I want us to dive in to some of that content a little more and make sure we've got some really strong takeaways for those that are watching today.
Yeah, the video masterclass is basically giving people an idea of what I did, because when I was sick, when I had my third baby, and for a few years until I got diagnosed and started doing these three things to turn it around, the third one being what we're talking about today, that shift to eating a whole foods diet. And I'm not a vegan, by the way, and I don't have like a heavy vegan agenda. However, I think that almost everyone needs to work on getting more of those plant foods, greens, vegetables, fruits, legumes, whole grains, nuts and seeds. Now, if you have reaction to legumes, whole grains, if you're gluten-free, that you can absolutely, don't throw the baby out with the bathwater here. There's still a lot of grains with no gluten you can eat. There's still a part of every blue zone diet. There's still a big part of every long living people on the planet, what they eat. You can probably get rid of it, especially while you heal your gut. If you're reactive to legumes and to whole grains, it's generally a gut disease.
Yeah.
Okay. And that's basically an epidemic in America. And people with autoimmune disease are also more likely to have leaky gut and issues like that. But what I go through in this free video masterclass is the 6 topics I got asked about the most. I was on lecture tour for 6 years, and I spoke in 450 cities. And I would tell my following on greensmoothiegirl.com, okay, I'm speaking in these 4 cities in Ohio and Illinois or whatever. And then twice a month, I would go out on lecture tours, and 200 to 500 people would show up in every audience. And so I would stay after for like 90 minutes and sign people's books and talk to them. I have had a lot of FaceTime with people who are suffering because of their standard American diet and interested in getting away from it. You know, greensmoothiegirl.com was put up when this got me every single person who encountered me with this. And I didn't make this as a prop. I literally was like, oh, we're going to start this and I haven't had lunch. Let me hear you. This is sprouts, like just get a sprouting mix, cover it with water, drain it. Super easy. Throw in some sprouted seeds. A salad mix, kale, cabbage, an apple, and some mixed berries. So this is just a quick way that I get a lot of whole foods in my diet. Like you can accomplish miracles with just a quart a day of green smoothie. This is what I'll have with lunch. I'll have another one with dinner. That's a quart. This is a pint right here. 2 of these is a quart. That's the bigger jar. So because I was out there, you know, unlike most online influencers, I've spent thousands of hours of FaceTime with my audience because of this lecture tour of 450 cities. And these are the questions that they asked me that went into this video masterclass, because I just think this was what would serve people best. So first video I do, these are all like 12 to 20 minute videos. You can do this video masterclass and learn an awful lot about what works in nutrition, what the habits are, the needle moving habits are. So you don't squirrel away on what some marketer told you to do that ends up being really unhelpful for you. First video is 7 foods that fight inflammation and promote energy and healing. So I go through those 7 foods, those 7 classes of foods that are most anti-inflammatory. Then I go through the foods that are the most pro-inflammatory. They actually cause inflammation. Number 2, how to rehab your gut with food. We are seeing an absolute epidemic of Crohn's disease, IBS, SIBO, leaky gut. They're just naming new ones every couple of years because of so many people have inflammation in the gut, probably because all the GMO foods we eat, all the processed foods we eat, the overeating of animal products, most of which have antibiotics, steroids, and hormones in them. So, you know,
we're taking antibiotics. We're being vaccinated. We weren't breastfed. We're not being birthed, you know, vaginally, many of us. So there's like, we're just stacking one thing on top of another. Yeah,
all of the above. I mean, kids right now, like my married son, I hope I have a grandbaby in the next couple of years. His child they will demand 3 times as many vaccines of him or her as my kids had, literally just 20 to 25 years ago. So you're right. And so I actually read a statistic. We were writing a blog post the other day. I read a study that there are so many antibiotics handed out to children in America that it equates to 1 course of antibiotics for every child every 11 months. 1 course of antibiotics can completely wipe out your gut flora.
Right.
Some people won't recover for years and years and years. So that's another passion of mine, is teaching people what to do before the antibiotic. I haven't given any of my 4 children an antibiotic in 25 years. And my college students, I got 3 in college right now, I've had to call them up and say, "Ooh, I know you're feeling sick. Like, you're going to go to Instacare. Okay, let me tell you, have the doctor call me, because I'm going to put you on all the natural stuff." Now I just have it in their college apartment. So they have all the natural antibacterial, antivirals. So they don't go straight to antibiotics, because I know the guaranteed damage to the immune system.
Right.
Of taking antibiotics. But anyway, so rehab your gut with food. You're right. Antibiotics, taking meds, they're gut wreckers. And when our gut and liver are damaged, we got some rebuilding to do. And the diet piece here can be massively powerful in rebuilding the gut. And it really has to be done. Even if we do the bioidentical hormones, and I've met a lot of ladies who really want to turn their hormone issues around, but this is the only one they're doing.
Yeah.
Taking the
and that
bioidentical.
doesn't work long term.
Right. So rehab your gut with food. Third video is my 5 best tips for eating super healthy, super cheap. The reason I did that video is that so many people tell me, I can't afford a functional medicine doctor, and I can't afford to eat healthy. All that organic food is healthy. Well, first of all, some good news, because I know I've said some not so good news about what's going on. We mentioned the vaccine schedule and all that. First of all, when I was doing this 20 years ago, and we were a 1-income family, and I was a stay-at-home mom, just working part-time as a college professor is all. I'll tell you, organics were hard to find, and they were 2 and 3 times as much. And organics are everywhere now. Hundreds and hundreds of organic products at Costco, almost every grocery store now. So it's a pretty good time to be a green smoothie girl and to get this going, because it's not just organic that's available at Costco and many other places. It's triple washed, done for you, organic. So it's never been easier to throw stuff in a blender, blend it up,
Right.
Our mothers didn't have a blender like Vitamix or Blendtec, or our grandmothers certainly didn't. So
right.
It just makes it easy for the family. Makes it easy for you, though. Starting with a quart a day, that's one of our major challenges to you, is to get you just started on a quart a day and put all those superfoods in it. Oh, I forgot. This also has turmeric root in it, like literally the root that you buy at the grocery store. So 5 best tips to eat super healthy, super cheap. Honestly, the second cheapest diet is a Whole Foods, mostly plant-based diet. The only cheaper diet is the dollar menu,
Right.
but you're going to pay the price later when you eat that time.
Either way, you're going to, right.
Yeah. So my recipes, they involve you being in the kitchen. They involve you being willing to cook, but a lot of them are things like, like a legume and vegetable soup. You can freeze it and you can get a lot of mileage out of a fairly small amount of time in the kitchen. Number 4, how you can beat your addictions in 4 days flat. I'll leave the surprise for that one. I won't you just talk to you about what is in there, because there's a video, you can watch it. But you can literally not crave sugar anymore in 4 days flat. Number 5, make 12 simple shifts for the healthiest year of your life and beyond, right? But if all you did is take one of these 12 changes a month, the impact on your life would be like mine. I mean, I was barely functional. Not only was my hair falling out, I was cold or hot all the time. I was moody. I cried all the time. I had no energy for my kids. I had gained 65 pounds. Not only are all those things gone and have been gone for 17 years, but I also love my life. I've written 15 books in that time. Anybody listening to this, I hope that you ask yourself this: what am I losing? What life goals, what ambition did I used to have? What was I going to do with my life that I'm not doing because I haven't solved these problems yet? I'll tell you what, I love food as much as I did 25 years ago when I was obese and had 21 diagnosed chronic disease states, which I have none of them now. I mean, I think the hypothyroid would be there if I weren't on bioidenticals.
Right.
But besides that, they're all gone. So these are the things that I feel are worth your time. These are things that were needle movers for me, these 12 simple habits that I put into place. And then the last one, and this is one I really love, because again, these are based on the questions I get most often. The 6th one is how to bring your partner and kids along for these healthy changes. Okay. If you're single, then this won't apply to you, but it might apply to you because you might get criticized when you start opting out of the way everybody else is eating around you. And they're thinking, she used to eat, she used to be so much fun. And, she would drink a bottle of wine a night with us and she would eat this and that. And now she thinks she's too good for us. There's still those issues. But anyways, that video is really about one of the most common questions I get, which is, I'm willing to make some change, make a little sacrifice, learn some different recipes, but my husband isn't liking it. He's like, oh no, my meat and potatoes is at stake here. Or the kids are like, oh, mom's, taking us down this weirdo health track. It's going to be embarrassing in front of my friends. So I'm a former psychotherapist. That was my earlier career. And so I kind of leveraged that for this last video that's about how to engage your family when you've decided, I want to do this. I want to eat more whole foods.
Yeah. Okay. So I want us to peel back some layers on that one, because I can tell you, I see these posts in our community. We have a very engaged Facebook group, as you probably know, Robyn, and women are coming in all the time talking about the symptoms they're experiencing, asking for advice and direction on trying out new protocols, or, wanting to find a doctor, or one of the common things that comes up is women talking about how hard it is for them to make the changes that they need to make in their own diet, because one woman said recently that by the time that she cooks for her husband and kids, she doesn't have energy left to cook for herself in the way that she needs. And this is something that's very real. I mean, of course, the really independent woman in me rises up when I hear something like that. And I'm like, and they are perfectly capable of making their own food. And you got to take care of yourself first, but I know these things are a lot easier said than done. We're not all wired the same as far as, how we deal with the relationships in our lives. And I'm really curious, when it comes to that lifestyle piece, what are some practical things that you've seen that really work for women that have families that need to make changes, that it's going to mean ruffling some feathers? I'm not even necessarily talking what are the health things to do? What's some of the just life strategies that could be really helpful for women who find themselves in this loop,
Yeah, I should mention that last video where I talk about how to bring your partner and your kids along. I was married for 20 years. I've been in a relationship for a long time now, but I was married for 20 years and I raised all 4 of my kids to adulthood. So I feel like a bit of a veteran mother now, in that my kids are 18 to 25. And mostly in that video, I share tips that are gleaned from being a mom in the trenches. And one of the many tips that I share in there is not to make an announcement. Don't say, I'm on a health kick and you're all coming with me and things are going to change around here. Okay? Mom's turning over a new leaf, and so all y'all have to too.
No. Yeah.
Guaranteed sabotage. Guaranteed.
That's right.
And remember, I've learned all these things mostly from doing them and being sorry, right? But I was a lot better with my younger kids. I developed this long game strategy, which we talk about in this video of we're in this for the long game. And most of the ladies who are struggling with their hormones, the women who are in the 35 to 65-year-old crowd, especially the 45 to 65-year-old crowd, all of a sudden they're willing to make changes in their diet and lifestyle. They weren't listening before because they felt better.
Right.
Most of those ladies have a child who is also seriously struggling with major health issues, sometimes more than one of their children. And so one thing is to make changes in a subtle way and just make a different dish and offer it up and tell your kids and your husband that you're excited about this new dish. I mean, if it's eggplant parmesan, they don't have to know that there's no meat in it. If no meat dishes are something you've never done before, I realize a lot of America, I was raised plant-based because that crazy turned orange Gerson therapy cancer grandma passed it on to, plus my whole family, my family owned a produce dealership. So we were already really plant-based. So that was not hard for me to eat less meat. I was only doing it because he wanted to do it.
Yeah.
But it is really hard for a lot of women and change. Remember too, that we don't like turn the Titanic 90 degrees. We turn it by degrees. Mm-hmm. And so kind of focus in on one of the 12 steps to Whole Foods, like focus in on maybe your self goal is to have a salad that's so good and so full of nuts and seeds and greens and fruits and superfoods that everybody loves it. Well, that's not hard to do. It's not hard to do. It's a different skill set. It's some different recipes. You don't have to have 200 recipes to completely transform your diet. Average American family only makes 10 main dishes. One of the 12 steps to Whole Foods is, I teach you like 30 different plant-based main dishes. And a lot of them, like, nobody would even notice there's not meat in it. Nobody would care. They're really sustaining. They're really hearty. If you say, okay, everyone, I'm a vegetarian or whatever labels, no. And so, another tip is to be in it for the long play. If you get rejected up front, remember, you were right where they were. I don't know when, 3 months ago, 3 years ago, whenever. You were right where they were. And you wouldn't have wanted somebody to tell you, I'm changing your diet.
Yeah.
And so just realize that you're going to get some resistance. And if you keep that love door open, so they can keep walking through it and you can keep walking through it, there's like a open exchange. There's air flowing through. You don't get that door slammed in your face. Don't get that door slammed in your face by your spouse or by your kids. I also completely agree with you that if you have ladies telling you, I have to make dinner for my husband and then I have to make different dinner for my kids. I remember I had a sister-in-law, it was my then husband's sister who made a different dinner for all 5 of her kids. Well, that's a full-time job. I hope she never, I was like, I hope she never has to go back to work because that's not sustainable unless your full-time job is feeding
cooking.
people. Yeah. So, I mean, that's a real challenge because here's the thing. If you set that up as an expectation and you do that for them for years and years and years, if you were to announce a change, then
the natives are restless.
Yeah, because then you not only have the challenge of, I'm learning new recipes and I've got to master some new skill sets. You now also have to overcome the all-out, potentially concerted, like people working together, sabotage that you're getting.
Right. Right. Well, this is awesome. I hope you guys will all go download or go sign up for the 12 steps to Whole Foods that Robyn's been talking about. And I appreciate you just holding some space for us, Robyn, to have this conversation to kind of, I'm as we've been talking, I'm thinking of, what else could I do to add more Whole Foods into my diet? What else could I do to up the ante on what I'm doing? Even though it seems that I have so many things dialed in, my gosh, I think there's more I could probably do. I mean, I'll do a few smoothies a week, but what if I made a commitment to doing smoothies every single day. You know, I could radically increase the whole foods that I'm getting in my diet. I think this is such an important conversation, and I hope everyone watching feels inspired in the way that I have to just take a look at what you're doing and consider where you might be able to do more and take on more for your health, you know, for your gut health, for your family, to make the world that you control better for everybody that's in it. So thank you so much for spending some time with us today. And we've got posted here in the status the links, so you guys go check everything out.
Thanks for having me, Misty.
All right. Thank you, Robyn. We'll see you guys.
Bye, everyone.